So, today's exciting and different because today we're on Let's Talk Destiny with Jamie Greene. But today, rather than her being the person doing the interviewing, she's actually being interviewed today. Today, of course, is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are watching. To those of you that have been great fathers, real fathers, godly fathers, to those of you that are still striving, you know, being present is like the most important part. And so I feel like that we just want to give you that shout out this today. So today we're going to talk about Jamie's been honoring fatherhood in general in the month of June, but today we're going to talk more specifically about her father. A lot of times when I'm talking about him to people, I say my father. He's actually our father. At least that's what they tell us. And, you know, he's the only father I've known. So, you know, if anybody else comes up now, sorry, you know, it's the only one we've known. So, but I want to talk to her about that. Now, I want to, you know, first provide the platform for you to say a little bit about your overall experience of being the daughter of James Greene. And I want to be very specific because it reminds me when at the end of near the end of our parents' life, we talked about mom, and with her Alzheimer's, daddy was three people. He was her husband, and he was our father, and he was the apostle. And so keeping those people, she reacted to him based on who he was to her in that moment. So I want you to kind of do the same, and I want you to think about him just as, you know, in those areas, speaking very specifically to your relationship with him in those various areas.
Okay, I'll start with the apostle. Um, in that role, for me, he was a man of great wisdom and biblical insight. Like he could take a scripture and dissect it like none other. And he would take you sometime really so deep in the scripture that you were left flabbergasted because like it would take you months to even figure out what he was talking about. But he was such an astute scholar, biblical scholar. And so when it came to biblical principles, biblical concerns, I knew that if I could get to him, I could get a better understanding of anything I was struggling with. Then, well, he wasn't my husband. So as a
Well, as a
father,
husband, how about as a husband?
as a husband, what I saw in him and what I um, garnered from him was the definition of loyalty and commitment. He was committed to his wife through the ups and downs, the good and bad, and he loved her intensely. And it really wasn't until mom got sick that I really saw exactly how much he loved her. Like I knew he loved her with regard to protection um, and providing and stuff like that. But to literally put his health and life on the line, worrying more about her than about himself. And while at the same time not really being able to accept that she was sick, because I think a part of that was that daddy always felt like he had to fix everything, whether it was church related, family related, whatever. He felt like there was something he could do to fix any situation. And I think the thing that disturbed him the most about his wife being sick and declining is that this is something he couldn't fix. And I saw that destroying him little by little. Each year, as mom got worse and worse and further into the Alzheimer's disease, I saw him deteriorating also because he wanted to fix her.
Yes.
As a father, I was joking with you the other day about how people say I had the best father in the world. And I always giggle because I'm like, you don't know all the fathers in the world, so how could you know if yours is the best or not? And I would laugh about it. But I think he was the very best in my world. Anybody that I compared him to would come up short. And from the very beginning that I have memories of my relationship with him, I just thought he was superhuman, almost like he was a superhero. He was, when anything was hurting or anything was wrong, I knew I could go to him. And I felt that way about him all the way up to the very end. Even when I saw him deteriorating, he was still my hero.
Wow. I like that word because hero, of course, it's relative, but it says something powerful about the person that it's attached to, because there is something about the way we see a hero is beyond. And I guess what makes them heroes many times is some part of their nature being supernatural, like being more than. And I understand that because I remember saying to someone, you know that life, as people progress and as they get older, that someday they're going to die. But I just never thought of a world where he wasn't in it. I didn't think about him dying. I mean, I know death is a reality, and I thought about it, in other, but no matter what sickness he had, no matter what his experience was, in those moments, it was like, yeah. And right up to the very end. So hero is a great word, I think, for him. I think part of being a PK sometimes, and we have talked about this before, people lose the thought, the concept that this man or this woman, whoever is their leader, that before they were a leader, before they were pastors, before they were all of that, they were just human beings, and they had families, and they had they had a life, honestly, outside of the church life. Tell me about some experiences you had with Dad outside of church. I know church was a big part of our life, his life, but talk about James Greene, the father, outside of church, so that people can get that sense of who he was outside of ministry.
A couple of incidents come to my mind. One of them goes all the way back to elementary school, and I think it was first grade at Frederick Douglass Elementary in Seaford, Delaware. And it was field day. And Daddy was there. I don't think anybody else was there. I don't know where everybody was, but anyway. I don't even know. How old are you? You're 3 years younger than me, so you probably were home crying or something. Anyway, because in the first grade,
at school,
first grade, you're only like what, 6?
Yes.
So you would have been, yeah, you were home crying. So
I was with my mommy.
Exactly. So Daddy was at the fields day, and all I kept thinking about, I was entered into a race, and my sole thought was, I've got to win this race because my daddy is watching.
Oh.
And oh my God, I'm getting choked up. And I came in second, and I was devastated. And I remember running up to Daddy and just grabbing him around his legs. And I was just crying and crying. And he was like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you crying?" And I said, "I didn't win." And he said, "You did good. Like, you came in second." And I was just going, and I just kept saying, "But I didn't win." And he just, like kept telling me, and other people were like telling me, "You did good. Look at all those other kids you came in." And I said, but I didn't win, and my daddy was watching. And I felt like such a failure, like, because I want my daddy to always see me winning. And I think that set a precedence for how I
Hey,
felt about him. Like, I never wanted to not win. When I had my children out of wedlock, my biggest concern was not what the people in the church were going to say, because I knew they were going to say something. But all I could think of was, I let my daddy down. I disappointed my daddy. And then I think about, like, when I was pregnant with Byron, and somewhere around my 7th month or whatever, I got real sick and I had to go to the hospital. My papa had died, Dinner Palmer, and that really had an impact on me for some reason. And I got real sick or whatever. So anyway, Daddy takes me to the emergency room. First, I called Dr. Gallagher. He was my doctor then, to let him know I was on the way to the hospital. And he met me outside the emergency room door. Daddy was standing there and he said, listen, Tiger, because I think he called everybody Tiger. And he said, I'm not going to take you inside that door because it's going to cost you money just to walk on the other side of the door. When I can tell you right out here in this hallway, I've heard about your grandfather's death or whatever, and I think all of that is affecting you. You just need to calm down and remember you're carrying a baby that's depending on you to be healthy, so the baby can be healthy. And he talked to me for a few minutes and we left. And the thing that helped me, what he said was good, but the fact that my daddy was the one there with me. Um, he was there with me. I remember a couple of times going to the hospital, like when I had my toenails sewed back on, and daddy was the one with me. So it seems like when there were major traumas in my life, he was there. And you and mom, I don't know where, you probably at Rita's, but we won't talk about that. But or the Dover Mall. But it just seems like he was always there when I had traumas. And that's what I remember about him.
and of course, because I'm a therapist, a light bulb so went on for me when you talked about your first grade experience, which, like you said, set a precedent for your life. And it helps people to see how we were different, because your whole focus in most of the decisions that you made and the things that you did was around making sure your dad was pleased with you. So at the times that you made mistakes or slip ups or whatever, your sense of failure was not so much around the fact that I made a mistake, and this is my life lesson, but how is it going to impact my father? And that's powerful, almost, in my field, we would say too much power for a person to have. And it's interesting that I think about times that watching that relationship with you and dad made me be so determined in so many ways. And I use an example of Byron being the firstborn grandson, and coupling that with your desire to please him. I remember you wanted to go to Rhode Island with our older sister, and you wanted to take Byron, and it wasn't a question of asking, you were just kind of saying because you were an adult. But dad was so adamant that the baby couldn't go. He was like, you're not taking, and these words just still resound in my head, you're not taking that child anywhere. And at that time, I must have been like 15 or 16 years old, but I remember thinking in my mind, that will never be me, because I'm not going to let them do that. And it's funny because as I go through back through life and think about that, I remember there was a period of time where Kevin had to be dropped off there, and then I would pick him up when I got off work, he'd be dropped off there from school, and I would pick him up and take him home. And Daddy was like, one night, he was like, that boy don't want to go home. And I said, that boy's going home. And he said, he don't want to go home. Say, y'all go to bed all early. I mean, he was just, and they're saying, Kevin, he must have been like 6, maybe. But my response was different to Daddy. It was like, you don't want nobody telling you how to raise your children. I'm your child. That's my child. He's going. And if he was going to be able to stay, he ain't staying now. Because now I got to show that I'm the parent, you know. And I think it's funny because those relationships for us were different. And like I said, I think that your whole being a daddy's girl, and you definitely were that, was around like this misconception, if you will, that there was an expectation of perfection. And I don't know if it, like we were talking about this in our session yesterday, where that story came from. Right. Where did that come from, that I can't make a mistake, or I gotta earn the love of our Father, or the respect or whatever, or if I let him down, how is that going to affect our relationship? And I think that was very paramount in you all's relationship. And but clearly, being his first biological child, there was a tremendous bond between the two of you. And sometimes you would say, oh, I don't see it, but if you're not, like, it's like from the outside looking in, of course you wouldn't see it because it's the norm. But he was aware of it. He even shared, I think I told you, that when you were a baby, you were premature and they weren't sure you were going to live. And he told me many times that he made a promise to God that if he let you live, that he would take care of you. And I think, and we know, because he was that kind of father, that many times he went above and beyond with us in terms of taking care. But I think it was that part of him that did that special bond with the two of you, that even when you guys like maybe didn't see eye to eye, there was this special relationship that that you had. And I think that's great.
But you know what, right there at that point, I meant to tell you the last time that we talked about this, because what I remember being told was a little different than that. I remember being told that because I was born prematurely during a time when it was almost like a guaranteed death sentence, that he made a covenant with God that if he would let me live, that he would dedicate his life to God, to serve him for the rest of his life, because he wasn't raised in the church like Mom's family. And I think Dad was like in his 30s when he, gave his life to God. So I never heard the part about taking care of me. I heard because I use that a lot as an example of why we grew up in the church, but we had to learn to have a personal relationship with God, not just based on our parents, because Daddy's commitment was about that. But when you told me that part about taking care of me, that is honestly the first time I ever heard that.
Well, let me tell you, I heard it many times, and you know my story.
Yeah.
Of how in the latter part of me and Dad's life, we became friends, and we were colleagues in the gospel. And, we had this relationship where we just were, very honest and forthright with each other. And, so I think because of that, he felt like he could say anything to me, still forgetting I'm still your daughter, because what he said to me is, And I remember this conversation, and it said, I know you know that I prefer your sister many times, and I want you to know why. And that's what he said. And that's when he told me this story. And even later in life, when sometimes things were rocky between you two, or he would call me to vent about something, and I would say, well, Daddy, I get the covenant, but I think you've done your share. And if you can't, just say no. And, rather than, but there was something about his commitment to God based around what he said about you, that he felt that he was obligated, even up until the very end, to do whatever, go above and beyond. And so a lot of times, that was his justification. And, we had that conversation when we had the Come to Jesus meeting. But people always know, it's just evident. It's just like everybody knew that me and my mom were besties. It's like it's just the way it was. I didn't, you don't grow up saying, yeah, I'm gonna grow up and be my mom's best friend, or I'm gonna grow up and be my daddy's girl. It's just how it happens. And that's why I say in parenting and families, there's always these dynamics. It's like the child that's more like you most of the time, and that's like even in other relationships, the child that's more like you is less the child that you're going to be close to, because a lot of your traits that you don't like about yourself, you're going to see in that child. And that was one of the challenges for us, was because I am like my father in so many ways. I look like my mother, but I act like my father. So just as stern and as determined and as he was, like I was the same. So at the end of his life, he had a tremendous respect for that, because he would ask me, and no, I'm not going to say what you want me to say. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to say what I believe to be right. And sometimes we would have disagreements, but I would say, now, did you want the truth, my feelings, or you want me to just agree with you? But he was a man, though, when you think of even the fact that he made God that promise and still honored it all of those years, it says
A
something
man
about,
of great integrity. Yes.
I was going to say, it says a great amount about his integrity. And it is a phenomenal thing, and sometimes a very hard to find thing, with men who hang in there because of the integrity.
I was thinking when about what you asked me about and some examples of fatherhood thing, and I very clearly remember when Trey was in Atlanta, Georgia, at a basketball camp. I think he was like 12 years old, and Dad and Mom were living on Spring Garden, and I was driving to Atlanta to get Trey. Daddy was concerned about me driving that far by myself, but I remember very vividly backing out the driveway. And when I backed out and onto the street, when I got ready to pull off, I glanced up to the door, and he was just standing there at the screen door with his hands on the door, just watching me. And it was like, I don't know if I felt like he thought he wasn't gonna see me again, or he would, I don't know what. And literally, as I'm slowly going down Spring Garden Avenue, I'm glancing back and he stood there at that door until he couldn't see me anymore. And that just, I can't even explain the feeling I had. Like, it was kind of like, I know as long as he's alive, he will always be watching for me and be concerned about where I'm going and if I'm okay and stuff like that. So that
I
was
think
another example that came to me about the daughter part.
I think one of the things that that you hear underlying in all of this is that family was very important to him. Um, and though he was one that would admit that he may not have done everything right, because again, he didn't have a lot of good role models for fathering, especially because his father was absent. And but he understood the importance of family. and
Yes.
worked very hard to maintain that. And I know that sometimes in his other roles, people would get upset because they felt like, oh, you know, it's because his children, this, that, and a third is what his family, but not knowing the man and not knowing like where he came from and understanding his history, where he left, you know, home at 16, joined the military, and spent all that time just traveling until he met mom, and then settling down at 32, you know, to start a family. It was important. He was at a place in his life where he was ready, and family became important to him. His relationship with God, you know, even solidified that even more. But, you know, his transparency about, you know, I wish I'd had a little more balance with it. I wish I had done more with you guys as a family. Again, goes back to speak to this integrity of this man that made a commitment that to the family and to the church, and lived his life in a constant battle to keep both of those. And I think that's a phenomenal, I wish that could be most men's plight, that they're struggling on how to maintain integrity and balance on two areas that are so important. But
What do you remember about his relationship with his father?
as Dad got older,
I'm not talking about the potatoes.
no, as Dad got older, and this, you're not interviewing me, but anyway, I'm gonna give you this question. As he got older, he constantly told me this story of his dad living in the same city that he lived in, but didn't live with them, and he frequented a bar near the house, and how he would literally go and sit outside of the bar in the hopes that he would just see his dad. And he said his dad would come out of the bar, rub him on the head, maybe give him a little money or something, and leave. And that's why even in my own life, when Christian's father and I were getting a divorce, and you know, divorces are ugly, and you know, pretty as you try to make them, as mature as you try to be, it's a sense of failure and loss. So anyway, he said to me one day when Chris was coming to pick Christian up, he said, I know you guys, you know, aren't getting along. He said, but whatever you do not stop that boy from seeing his son, because he loves that boy and that boy loves him. And then he told me the story again about when he sat outside the bar. So I have really passed that story on. As a matter of fact, my nephew Trey, I was just telling him that story about you. And I was saying, you know, no matter what the relationships are with us as the adults, and I tell my oldest son about my grandchildren, you know, even if you guys don't get, you know, stay together and raise your children in the same home, just remember that they are the most important gifts. Today on Father's Day, I have two sons, and I love both of those men for those gifts. And I was able to say, you know, I sent them texts, you know, that just said, thank you. Thank you for the gifts. And thank you for being a father. Because I know, like, especially with my youngest son, you know, he's a real father. And, you know, we don't always, like, personality wise, but when it comes to loving your children, wanting to be in their life, wanting to teach them, wanting to help them, he's a great father. I can't take that from him at all. So I think about that a lot when I think about Daddy, because I think about things that, you know, he could have done differently. But I just, like I tell people, you do the best with the information that you have at the time. And I believe with all my heart, he was the best father he could be. Not having his father active in his life, not having, I've never heard him speak of any other male role models that when he was growing up. And at 16, like I said, he left and went to the military. So, he was put in a situation where maybe somebody in his unit was like a father to him, or one of his sergeants or something. But, family, the people that birthed you, that brought you into this world, your heritage is important, and it was important to him. And as quiet as it's kept, I think there was a big void in his life because of that.
Absolutely. And I just think about, like, no matter, and again, it goes back, we cannot not talk about the church because it was such a big part of our life. And I honestly grew to resent that part because it just took away so much of their time. Like, we didn't get to do family stuff. If we ever went out of town, it was for church. And maybe while we were there, we could go somewhere and pretend we were having a vacation. Like, I remember when we went to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and all the tourist sites and stuff that are in Chattanooga. Well, yeah, we saw a couple things, but mainly we were there because Daddy was there to preach. And so, and another thing I think about is I never really understood what my friends were going through that didn't have fathers, because I couldn't relate to that. Like, I knew that they were telling me they don't have a father in the house, or I don't know where my daddy is. And I heard them, but I didn't really hear them because I couldn't understand what that even meant. Like, where is he? Like, in my 9, 10, 11-year-old head, I'm thinking, what do you mean you don't know where your daddy is? Like, I couldn't even process that because my daddy was there. And so it took me many years to even understand what a person might be going through that doesn't have a father.
My youngest son's father said to me one day, before we even had Christian, he said, "Your normal is not everybody's normal. And most people have not had the life that you've had, where all your life your parents have been together, living in the same home, getting along. You were raised by both your parents, they're still together. That whole dynamic is what started out to be the American dream, but for so long has not been. Is either a single parent home, or it's grandparents raising children, or some family member, or the system." And so I always equated, like, with me and my understanding of worship and my ability to worship comes from that place where a father cannot give you everything that you think you want, or not take you everywhere you think you need to go, but that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. A father may tell you no in times when you want to hear a yes, and I got that from having a natural father who, I believe, many times his no's and his not taking us on vacations wasn't an intentional, "I'm going to make your life miserable" kind of thing. Because again, your reality is, I didn't even know about family vacations and stuff, or going to the movies or nothing, because all we knew, I tell people, we didn't even know there was a choice in going to church, because the question was never posed, "Are you going to church?" The question was, even when we were teenagers, the question was, or the statement was made, "It's time to get ready."
That's right.
So it wasn't even like, "Are you going?" It's like, "It's time to get ready." The only so, we didn't even know. It was like, when we got older, it was like, oh, there was really a choice. I could have said no. Like, when when I got to be 16 and realized I could say no, I was like, "Nah, not tonight. I'm going to the basketball game tonight." But I think it comes from that whole idea. It's like, he didn't have that either. He didn't have family time. He didn't have family vacations. So even like times when we would go to see our aunt and them in Massachusetts, I'm pretty sure a lot of that had to do with mom.
Absolutely.
You know, because I'm gonna tell you, like, I mean, and it's funny because they say you marry like your dad, and I find that I have to say, did you call your mom? Did you check on your mom? You know, it's like, I was like, how's your mom making out? Do you want to go down to see her? Because if that's not what you're used to, it's hard to pass on something that you, and so for me, I was able to see this strong man who sometimes told me no, but in his own way would, you know, give his last for us to be safe and to
Yeah.
be happy. And I think it goes back to, I told somebody one day, I said, you know, I think we were poor, but I didn't know we were poor because everything they did was to keep us feeling safe. And I I learned later in life that we had actually got evicted one time. And I was like, what?
What you mean we got evicted?
Did you know we got evicted?
I don't want you. I've heard you told me that a couple of weeks ago, but I don't remember that.
My mom told me, you know, because she was like, yeah, like that time when we had to, well, you know, back then they just said we had to leave. Um, they had both, you know, it was one was on West Main Street and we moved to the little house. Now, see, but they had us thinking, not trying to deceive us or anything, but that we were waiting for the house to finish getting built
Right.
on Stanton Avenue.
Another form of protecting us from pain.
Right. Because again, something that generation did that generations now don't do is shield your children from your grown-up business. They don't need to know that your lights is going to get cut off. They don't need to know what you got to do to make it happen. Just make it happen so
Right,
that
right.
and that's what they did. So we thought we were just in transition.
That's correct.
And I mean, it's like I told people, I said,
Girl say.
I don't know the stories. I mean, I don't know the stories I hear people talking about. I went to bed hungry. I don't have that story.
Right.
I didn't have this. I don't have that story, but I think we were poor. I think we were struggling, but I think because our parents were people of faith, that God always made a way. And I saw provision,
Yeah.
which now as an adult and as a pastor and as a mom myself, I realized that if we were doing okay, then those miracles wouldn't have been needed. So apparently we were struggling because
Yeah.
people would
Yeah.
come and the testimony was just when we needed it. Somebody came and gave us this, and just when we had no food, God sent somebody they went grocery shopping and bought us food. So yeah, so we were struggling, but the reality was that's what good parenting does. Uh, but I also have to say, and this is where I want to come and bring it back. Do you feel like in some ways that I have a saying, overparenting breeds retardation. So do you feel like in some ways our parents overparent?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt. Absolutely.
I laugh a lot about that. I say to the kids, words we never heard in our home. Well, curse words we never heard. Calling people out of their name, we never heard that. Budget, we never heard that.
Right.
We never heard that. Vacation, we never heard that.
Good credit.
So this was our norm. You know what I mean? It's like, so these things were all new and we had to learn them as we got older.
And it's a lot harder to learn when you get older.
And
Right.
yeah, because a week or two before Daddy died, he asked me a question. He said, do you think it's ever too late? And I said, it's never too late. Because that's what I believe. But he was like, there are just so many things I wish I had done differently. And I, at that time, I said, we all have those regrets, Daddy. You know, I mean, every person that's living can look back on some areas in our life and say, I wish I had done something different right there. But these life experiences, like I said, they're not failures, they're steps to success. You know, it's not over just because you failed at it. You tweak it, or you know, you come up with something better.
Yeah. Wow.
So if somebody was to ask you, like, you know, tell me, you know, in 3 sentences or less about your dad, because you used the word hero earlier, and in this broadcast you're calling it the proud daddy's girl. Tell me what that means.
Um, I'm proud to be a daddy's girl. Like, I notice in society, like a lot of terms and whatnot, somewhere down the line, they take on these negative connotations, like mama's boys. Um, I'm always proud to say that my sons love their mother, that my sons would fight for their mother, that my sons would do anything for me, that they love their mama. So I don't know when it turned into a negative thing to say you're a mama's boy, because I don't personally see anything wrong with it. And so with the daddy's girl thing, I think I've heard recent in a lot of years that it means that no other man will ever satisfy you, that all of your life you constantly compare everything to what your daddy would do. And so that's why you always come up short, because nobody can meet that standard. And to me, it simply means that I had a father that I could go anywhere and say, James Greene is my dad. I've never had anybody come up to me and say, are you James Greene's daughter, or Brother Greene, or Bishop Greene, or Apostle Greene, whichever, he was, what title he had at that time. And I have to cringe and wonder what are they getting ready to say before I say yes. Like, I'm ashamed to even like say yes. I've never had that experience. I'm extremely proud to say to anybody, even people that had issues with his sternness, and people would say stuff like, your daddy was so mean. And I would just smile and say, yep, because I'm just still proud of him. And to me, that's what it means. It's like, I can't think of anything about my father that I hated. I've interviewed and talked with young women who had really horrible relationships with their fathers, and they really don't have anything positive to say about it. And that breaks my heart, because no matter what shortcomings my dad had, I think sometimes he could be insensitive. Um, I remember when I was diagnosed with clinical depression and anxiety, and he wouldn't even talk about it. It was like, I wanted to talk about it, but he wouldn't talk about it. And my therapist was like saying, I think a part of that is because he feels like it's something that he did wrong, that 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 you're this way. He feels like he should have done something differently. So that's why he didn't want to address it. But further down the road, he got very ill, and they were living over there in Parkside Apartments. And he said to me one day that he wanted to apologize to me for not listening to me and trying to understand me, because he was extremely depressed. The boys had to take him to the bathroom. You had to do things for him, health wise and personal hygiene wise, that a man with his pride was not comfortable with. But he said, I totally understand now that level of depression that makes you not even want to get up anymore. So in that moment, I could not have been prouder, because even though I was upset that he wouldn't discuss it when it was happening to me, the fact that he came back later, because he still could have, never said anything. He could have gone to his grave, letting me think that it was a defect in me that caused me to have depression or anxiety. But when he said that, it was like the sunshine for me. And I think if anybody else, and I've heard other people say it, but it didn't, I'd have the same impact as when my daddy said it.
And, again, I think that goes back to who he is and in your mind, and not just your mind, but I tell people that all the time when it comes to ministry, because I know that my dad was like a tremendous sought after teacher and a man of wisdom. And I tell people, if I go to my dad's church and preach, I don't care who else says, oh, you did a great job, or that was a powerful word, blah, 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 blah. If my dad says that was good, Kel,
Yeah.
I'm cloud nine then, because like, I don't care what the y'all niggas say, honey. My daddy say, I preach, honey, because I would hear him critique so many people, like,
Yes.
that boy just shooting rabbits and he misquoting the scriptures, and I'd be like, this man. And even Bishop Robinson and I were laughing about that. Bishop was like, if I could preach at y'all's church and your dad said I did good, you thought you did something,
That's right. That's right.
He was harder on me, I felt, because I was his daughter, that when it came to preaching. So when he would say, yeah, that was a good word, Kel, I got me a few notes, I'd be like, ah. And I don't care. I ain't hear nothing. Somebody else could have said that was the sorriest message you ever preached. I'd be like, bye. Because honey,
right.
my dad spoke. And I think
that is too funny.
It speaks volumes to, so a lot of times we would have conversations around things like that in the latter years that we would talk about. Him and I had great in-depth conversations about keeping the commandments. And he believed in that. But, he was like, how do you change these people's minds, to to understanding? You'd have to reteach. I was getting a phone call while I was in the middle of, you would have to reteach, you would have to reteach them like things. And he was like, that will be so hard to do. And he said, yeah, he said, but in our studying, the call keeps coming through and I don't know how to, like, I had it on do not disturb. That's why I don't know how somebody is able to get me. Hold on. Yeah. We'll try it one more. But yeah, so in that situation, I felt like it was very, very important that that I understood. Well, I don't even remember what I was saying now. This phone call, it's messed me up. But I was talking about him, being so wise and being that person. And then we were talking about it, and I said it really helped me to understand the role that he played, not just in our life as our father, but with other people as well. But most importantly, the caliber of man that he was what made what he said out of his mouth most important. It wasn't just that he was dad. It's that this is a man that white, black, Chinese, Portuguese, everybody reverenced because he is.
Like he could walk into a room and not say anything. And his very presence shifted the atmosphere and demanded respect. Like I was thinking about Mr. Bassett and that video he did. And when he was on the golf course about Jim Greene and how much he meant to him. And he said to me afterwards, he inboxed me and I thanked him for doing it. He said, I almost cried. I had to not let myself cry because I think about what an impact that man had on my life. And I just miss him so much. He said he taught me so many things. And you just don't think about that because like most of the people that know him that we know, all they know is a
Go ahead.
all they know is Apostle Greene, Pastor Greene, Bishop Greene, whatever. But he was so much more than that. And he was friends to people. He was a father, he was a grandfather. Our oldest sons,
Jamie,
I can hear you.
can you see me?
I can now.
Oh, okay.
That girl is crazy. Even like with our oldest children, we were talking about how he was not just their grandfather, he was their father because they didn't have a father in their lives. And so he was so many things, and each one of them came with a level of integrity that was uncompromised. And he had a caliber, like you said, he was such a high caliber person, and it had nothing to do with religion because like we've said many times, he wasn't brought up in that. He was 32 years old before he even started going to church and understanding what that even meant. So it was a part of who he was, period. And that's the thing that I love about him. And I'm always going to be a daddy's girl, I think.
And that's cool because again, it goes back to who he is. And like you said, that we're never going to be ashamed
That's right.
that he's our father. You know, we were talking the other day, and we were talking about how someone you were talking to was talking about how she's gone places and her dad was there and she was embarrassed. And I say to people all the time, I've never, ever, ever been embarrassed to be James Greene's daughter.
Now, wait a minute. Let's tell the truth. What about the time he came pick you up from school?
Yeah, I was really embarrassed then, because I was like young and highly impressionable. It was my vulnerable years. Like, so it's like, how do you come to pick me up and you don't have any socks on? Your clothes don't match. Your legs, his ankles is ashy. Yeah, I was embarrassed. I'm not even gonna lie.
But think about this. Why was he in such a hurry to come get you and because not take time? Because
I had hurt myself at school and he came to get me. Yeah. I appreciate that. I do. Just,
that's funny. Wow. But yeah, I mean, I just like when I hear people say, I go places and I see my dad and I turn away so he don't see me, or when people be laughing, like pointing like, there's your father, and I have to, smile and walk away. And I can't even imagine that. And it breaks my heart that other people have to experience that. But
or even worse, when they say, they don't even know who their father is or where their father is, or or they know him but they have zero relationship with him. I think sometimes it's just more of a blessing than we realize, because the more and more this world goes on, the harder it is for that whole dynamic of a family to be like a mom, a dad, the children in the home raised together, but then it goes back to honoring the Lord and loving the Lord. So
yeah. Well, I am publicly, privately, any other kind of way, I'm proud to say that I am a daughter of James Frederick Greene. And I had times, as you said, when I did it, we didn't get along, we had disagreements. But I was never ashamed to say, that's my daddy. And I have children who my oldest son, his father died when he was 10 months old. So he didn't have any relationship at all with that side of the family. And I totally believe that had an impact on him, and has a lot to do with even some of the choices he made that has landed him where he is now. And I think about, when I'm talking about the importance of fatherhood, but I think what's even, I don't know, because I don't like to compare people's situations, griefs or whatever. But on the other hand, I have a son whose father is alive, and I'm not even going to say well, but he's alive. And he has not been a part of his son's life. And so I often look at the two situations, even though they're different. One father's deceased and the other one is still alive. But the absence of the fathers is still brings the same result.
It
And
brings the same result, but yeah, but I think it's like it's just like if I know my mom or dad is dead, I know there's no opportunity for us to be together. But I think there's always this hope that resounds in us when the person's living that we can reconcile or whatever we need to do. So yeah, I don't know. It's like saying, that whole dynamic of like when you have children, it's like, is it better for your child when your child to die when it's a young before it comes into this world and blah blah blah, or is it better to have memories that you can say, even though my child's gone, either way, the pain of losing a child is painful,
yeah,
but which, so I think it's hard to really say, like, even in that situation, I never knew my dad, so I don't even know what a relationship with him was like, and there's no opportunity for that to happen. I think that's a little more closure, then there's always a hope that one day we could reconcile, we could get together, we can work it out, we can do whatever.
it's like I don't even like to compare them, even though I'm aware of them. Because like with my oldest, people have always said, well, he can't really miss his dad because he never had a chance to know his dad. But there is we were designed a certain way by the creator, and there is a void where there should be a dad. And as he
And it's
got
not
older,
even about, yeah, I'm sorry, because it's not about knowing that particular person, it's about that role. And
exactly.
even if someone else stepped in and had filled that role, like, a father, not a grandfather, then that would have been even better. But he didn't even have that either. So yeah, I get it.
So again, I think about, like we were saying, that those boys, the older ones, they had daddy as a grandfather and they had him as a father.
Yeah.
And so it's a big void. But we have to hold on to the principles that he taught us. So I think all the time about some of the things he would say that at the time he said it, it would make you just like grit your teeth. And sometimes you want to throw stuff at it. But the things that he taught us, not just biblical principles, but life principles, have brought us a long way. And I think that they can carry us to the end of our journey as well.
Amen.
Yeah. But it's funny because people ask me all the time, like, do you wish your parents were um, alive, or they could come back and visit? And I say, absolutely not. And that sounds really harsh, but and I look at the condition of the world today, and for one thing, I'm very much aware of the condition that they were in at the times of that physically, emotionally, or whatever. I wouldn't want them to come back to that. And I just think that I wouldn't want them to have to deal with the world the way it is today. I miss them, but no, I wouldn't want them to come back.
Well, Jamie, you have a right to be a proud daddy's girl. You have a right he was somebody to be proud of.
Thank you.
So, again, we'll talk again. We'll next year, we'll do it every year.
I have one more question for the therapist, not my sister. Um, Knowing how much I love my dad and my mom, but since we're talking about dad today, why is it that I have not had any real desire to go to his grave? Like
Well,
I
that could
see
be
people all the time going to their parents' grave sites on their birthdays, on holidays, putting flowers, whatever. I don't even think about that.
again, you have to think about and cultures and subcultures. I think in our family, like how many like our parents didn't go to their parents' graves. Like my mom didn't go to her mom's grave, her dad's grave. So that isn't significant to us. It is significant to some people. Um, there's also, that whole, like, it could be one or two things and it will require more conversation, but it could be like, for me, it's like the understanding that that's not them. That's what's what's returned to the earth. The
Yeah.
other part of that is, I don't, for me, I don't see the significance of going to a stone and doing that. Conversations I have with my parents, I can have it sitting right here. I don't have to drive over to the cemetery to say, Mom, I miss you. I want to talk to you. I wish you were here. And so that's not necessary. That if you found that something in you wants to do it, I would encourage you to do it. But you don't have to do it because other people do it. It has to be something that what brings healing to you. And I don't know that going, and I went to my sister's grave one time, and twice, the first time I went, I cried. The second time I went, I was like, okay, I'm just like sitting out here at a stone. Like, so conversations I had with Sylvia, I can have them anywhere. So that's not necessarily, that's like the whole, like, why do other people do them and I don't feel the need to do it, because it's not necessary for me.
Yeah.
But if it was necessary for you, like, then I would say go and see if you feel any better. But I don't think that's gonna, for me, I know that's not gonna make me feel any better going staring at the grave.
All
So
righty then.
that'll be $35.
Is that the family discount?
Yep, because I charge $50 an hour.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Send me an invoice.
All right, and I'll send you my cash app.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
You did a good job as the interviewer.
Thank you. Thank you. You tried to step in my role a couple times, but it's all right. All right, babe. I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right. Talk to you. Bye-bye.